Good afternoon, myself, Dr. Sonal Mehta. I am lead medical advisor in TAS. And as you know, being a knowledge partner, in TAS Women Health has organized this webinar with eminent faculty, Dr. Sunil Jindal. He is the renowned ART specialist. And I welcome you all to this webinar given by Dr. Sunil Jindal on male infertility. Dr. Sunil Jindal is Scientific Director, Dr. Madhu Jindal Memorial Trust, Test Tube Baby Center, Meerut. He's Vice Chairman, Delhi ISAR, Delhi IIGE. He has to his credit more than 75 awards from different organizations, and he has written many up to 8 textbooks on fertility and over 200 national and international presentations. And his special interest is fertility enhancing gynecology laparoscopic surgery, as well as reproductive surgery and ART. With this, I welcome Dr. Sunil Jindal, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Sonal. Once again, in the series of lectures which we have, particularly these lectures which we've had on testosterone, hypogonadism, this was a lecture which was planned about the medical management. Why? Because medical management is something which all of us want to do, and all of us should have an idea how to do it. All these patients who come to us normally come as a couple, and the man needs to be looked into because 50% of the problem lies with the man. Today is Father's Day. I mean, it's a beautiful day. For all those people who have their fathers, you are blessed to have the biggest, I would say, niyamat in your life. Jise kehte hain, the treasure, the biggest treasure. And those who do not have, my goodness, you never lose a father. A father always is there with you. And इसी बात पे एक छोटा सा आपको एक शेर जरूर अर्ज करूंगा मैं आज कि अजीज, अजीज मीन्स क्लोज, अजीज भी वो है, नसीब, नसीब भी वो है, दुनिया की भीड़ में सबसे करीब भी वो है, उनकी दुआओं से चलती है जिंदगी, उनकी दुआओं से चलती है जिंदगी, क्योंकि खुदा भी वो हैं और तकदीर भी वो हैं. This is what a father is. And happy Father's Day to all of you. And today, on Father's Day, I'm going to tell you about the medical management of those people who want to become a father and deserve to be a father. So I would begin my presentation, and I'm beginning my presentation now on the medical management of the infertile male. During this time, I have tried to make it as simple as possible, as practical as possible, with things which you can utilize and use in your daily practice. Well, thank you, Dr. Sonal, for the fantastic introduction which you've given for me. But I am today on Father's Day, a father of 3 lovely children. I have a fantastic wife. I'm a surgeon urologist by training, an andrologist and ART specialist by passion. Have given birth to over 6,000 children till now. And what I love most is teaching and to be able to give babies to the people who do not have them. So the first thing for us to understand is that the goal-specific medical management of infertility is to diagnose all the reversible causes and to achieve seminal improvement in terms of a pregnancy. And in spite of the advancement in all the diagnostics which we have, about 25% of abnormal semen analysis, no etiology can be identified. And this is a major area of the population. Now, what are the learning objectives which we have? So we have, first of all, an overview of male infertility conditions subjected to specific medical treatment. Next is the conventional specific medical treatment. Then we have novel specific medical treatment. And then I probably will not speak over here about lifestyle, but I'll just touch over lifestyle as a cause of male infertility. So this is a very interesting slide for us to understand. And where are we compared to our relatives? Now a chimpanzee is 100 pounds. He has testicles which are 64 cc, and he has sperms which are more than 1 billion per ml. A human being has testicles, well, around 14 to 20 cc, and the count is approximately on an average about 64 million. And a gorilla is 600 pounds. He has very small testes and a very small sperm count. So if we look at it, there is one thing for us to understand, that the size of the man does not matter. Now, what is the extent of the problem? Now, 50% of the contribution towards infertility, we know very well, is by men. And sperm dysfunction, azoospermia, ineffective coitus, bring up to 50% of infertile couples. And therefore, andrology is at the center of the reproductive medicine. And we need to understand this. Now, how do we evaluate? Now, to evaluate these men, the first and the most important thing is the history and physical examination, which every man needs to be examined. Then we need 2 semen analysis, any pertinent lab testings further, and then you have to decide whether you would like to take them up for a surgical management, a medical management, or I would like to take them for assisted reproductive technology. We need to understand one small thing, that even if we take people up for ART, if the man has a problem, he needs to be on medical management. And in case a surgical management has been done, still at times you need to keep them on a medical management. So the core of the whole treatment is medical management. Now, I would come to specific medical treatment as an overview. Fan. Now, conventional, you could have treatment, fan. Conventional, you could have subclinical treatment of male genital infections, which is very important because we normally do not give as much importance to the male genital infections as we should, while it is of pertinent importance. The second is any endocrine disorder which is there can be treated medically. And the third which can be treated are ejaculatory disorders. And the novel treatment today, which is being followed very phenomenally, is for excessive oxidative stress and obesity-related male infertility. So I'd like to cover all of them in this fashion so that an overview could be there for all of us to treat these patients. So in conventional specific medical treatment, we could have treatment of subclinical GTI, and for endocrine disorders, we could have treatment of hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism. Now, subclinical genital tract infections. It is very prevalent, about 10 to 20%. Now, why is it so prevalent? It is so prevalent because whenever a male gets urinary infection, it is not fully treated. And once the burning goes away after taking the antibiotic for 1 or 2 days or 3 days, he stopped the antibiotics, and these infections go into the seminal vesicles, the prostate, epididymis, and stay over there and multiply and lead to genital infections which become very difficult to treat. So what all do you have for this? You have bacteria like E. coli, gonorrhea, trachomatis, urolithecum, hominis. These are the major bacteria which are there, because of which this takes place. Now the next question which always would come is this a cause? This is a very significant cause, because number one, the presence of pus cells leads to an attraction to these sperms, to have these sperms attracted and forming clumps in the semen. And it leads to a lot of and very severe ROS production, which is another issue. Now, the next is I'll just put on, I'll just take 1 minute, because just 1 minute. Yeah. Thank you very much. I just had to put it on to Facebook Live, which I had not. So it's now on Facebook Live. So now what all bacteria do you have? You have gram-negative bacilli, which you normally would culture, like E. coli, which is the most common organism to give infections in the semen. You could have gonorrhea, you could have chlamydia, ureaplasma, mycoplasma. Now all of them need antibiotics. So if you ask me what are 2 antibiotics which normally would be able to cover all of them, it normally is going to be a fluoroquinolone, and with a fluoroquinolone, doxycycline. A glass of water. Doxycycline. So in these patients who have infection, you need to give fluoroquinolones and doxycycline. You also have to make one thing through. You have to check whether the cells which you are seeing, are they really pus cells or are they round cells? If they are, so what you need to do is an ENDS test. In this ENDS test, you use and stain, and those which are peroxidase positive are normally granulocytes, and those which are peroxidase negative are round cells. So by a microscopic look, which gives you that probably they are pus cells, till you have done an ENDS test, you will not come to know whether they are pus cells or round cells. So this test needs to be done whenever you get pus cells. Now, what does leukocytospermia do? Leukocytospermia would be there whenever you have the pus cells more than 1 into 10 to the power 6. And it's a marker of reproductive tract inflammation. Now, reproductive tract inflammation, what does it lead to? It leads to motility impairment, morphology impairment, and it decreases the DNA integrity. And because of these 3 reasons, it leads to male subfertility. There has been a study in which they have tried to find out that the percentage of DNA damage in normal sperm counts would be about 25%. In abnormal sperm counts would be about 34%. And if they are abnormal with leukocytospermia, then they would range to up to 39%. So it's such a major thing which governs the fertility of the man. Now, what would you do? You would give them antibiotics. You could give them, along with that, some anti-inflammatories. Some antihistamines have also been given, but you would also add to them antioxidants, which is very important. Now, I have come over here to this particular slide where I'd like to explain one thing for you. Now, from the hypothalamus, you get the gonadotrophin releasing hormone, which acts on the pituitary gland. This pituitary gland gives FSH. FSH works on the Sertoli cells, the germ cells, and it gives us the spermatozoa. While the LH works on the Leydig cells to give us testosterone. There is a negative feedback which takes place from testosterone to the hypothalamus as well as to the pituitary. And similarly, you have inhibin B, which works on the pituitary as well as on the hypothalamus. So whenever there is an decreased testosterone, which is a very important hormone, what is going to happen is that there is going to be a feedback to release more GnRH on the pituitary, more LH would be released, and you would get more testosterone. And if it is more and normal, then there would be a negative feedback. Similarly, over here. But this feedback, if it gets deranged, or if there is less of a hormone, then a problem can arise. So next we come to hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism. And it's important for us to understand the subset of these patients. Now these are men who have a low LH, who have a low FSH and a low testosterone. And these men normally would not have a proper virilization. And they are best treated with gonadotrophins. And the best results are got whenever you are going to treat these men who do not have undescended testes. So now Leydig cells are first of all primed. And how do you prime them? You prime them by increasing the LH level by giving them HCG. How much of HCG would you normally give them? About 2,000 to 5,000 international units twice weekly. So once you have given these men HCG and testosterone is forming, you would see the testicular size. And if the testicular size is fine, it has increased, then you would understand that this man probably has a normal testosterone, get testosterone tested, and you would add to them HMG. Normally 150 units of HMG, you would give them twice or thrice a week. And you can expect these sperms in 3 to 12 months. Pulsatile GnRH I have never given, but this is there in literature. And this has been used where SCG does not work. Now, this was a patient I would give you an example about. It's very interesting because the story of this patient is the mother came to me and said, there's a relative I know who wants a baby and does not have sperms. Can you please tell me, where can I get the most expensive sperm from? So I asked her to show me the papers. And this is about 15 years back, yes. So I saw those papers. It was hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism. I examined the testes were small. FSH was 0.4, LH was 0.5. Testosterone was down. So I told them that the best sperm, I don't know if it's the most expensive, will be his own sperm. And let's try. So we gave him HCG, and in 6 weeks, the testosterone was normal. Testicular size appeared to be normal too. After that, we started HMG, and sperms appeared at the end of the 14th week. The sperm count was less. We did an ICSI in the first cycle, didn't get pregnant. In the second cycle, it was a long time back, about 14 years back. So we transferred 4 embryos, and they were quadruplets. Then we did a fetal reduction, and finally she had 2 beautiful healthy twins. This is another patient, hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism, in whom we had given for 12 months HCG, HMG. Then we did a testicular biopsy, harvested sperms, did ICSI, and has twins. This is a very old data which I have put in. Now we have a lot of more patients, but at that time we had 9 patients, and this is the data which I am just presenting. Diagnosed, 5 patients had sperms in 4 to 12 months. 1 conceived naturally. 4 underwent ICSI, 3 got pregnant. 1 patient underwent a testicular biopsy. Sperms were recovered, ICSI was done, and pregnancy was achieved. And 1 patient had no sperm development after biopsy of 12 months. And 2 patients had no sperms after 4 to 5 months and were lost to follow-up. So if you look at it, it is one beautifully treatable condition, hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism. And few patients can conceive naturally. Sperms can be frozen once they appear. They can be taken up for ICSI. In cases where sperms are negative, you could do a TISA, and these patients can bear their own offspring, which is the beauty. Now, you can also give HCG as medication and even clomiphene as medication in Klinefelter syndrome. I have a very large series of Klinefelter syndrome men whom we have worked on to give babies. And this is a beautiful study in which they have found that the sperm retrieval increases in these men whenever you would either give them testosterone in the form of HCG, boost testosterone by HCG, or you would give them anti-estrogens. And whenever you do a micro-TCA in these people, if they have been primed with HCG or clomiphene and the testosterone is normal, the chances of getting sperms becomes better. Similarly, in non-obstructive azoospermia, if the testosterone is at low normal or below normal, then you would like to do a micro-TCA after you have given them drugs so that the testosterone has become normal. Now, a lot of people always ask me, and this is a question for everybody, can we give HCG and HMG in a normogonadotrophic man to increase sperms and have better sperms? So the answer is, till date, the beneficial effect of this has not been proven by any large studies. And this job has been going on from 1987, but till now, there is no proof for it. Now, anti-estrogens, very important for us to understand that they are the most commonly used therapeutic drugs for idiopathic infertility. Clomiphene and tamoxifen have been evaluated as an empirical treatment in idiopathic male infertility. And clomiphene citrate is normally prescribed as 25 to 50 milligram a daily dose for 3 to 4 months. And men who have been treated with clomiphene citrate consistently demonstrate an elevation in the serum FSH, LH, and testosterone. Now, there are a lot of studies which have taken place, well-designed studies have taken place, Cochrane reviews have taken place. But one thing for us to understand is that there are a few studies which have shown the beneficial effect of clomiphene in increasing testosterone and sperm count, and also in some the pregnancy rate. So in case the testosterone is low or as at the lower end of normal, you can give these men clomiphene citrate. So this is a table which I wanted to show you, which shows the doses as well as what is the mechanism of action, what is the benefit, and what is the level of evidence. So a recording of this probably, or a PDF of this will be provided to you, so you could see this table. And the table is self-explanatory. And I got this so that all of us, you could actually get the story of how to use these drugs. Now, disorder of ejaculation is very common. People would either not be able to ejaculate or would have a low volume. And whenever it may be there, it may also be because of retrograde ejaculation, for which you normally would like to see a post-ejaculate urine sample. There are drugs available, but they are not much used. And even if you use them, it's not very successful. So either you would like to retrieve these sperms from the urine, or you would like to do a TSA-XC for them. Then you would come to specific medical treatment, which could be the novel. Now, novel is of two types. A lot of research now has gone into excessive oxidative stress. And excessive oxidative stress and obesity-related male infertility needs a lot of looking into. So what happens with excessive oxidative stress? Whenever sperms have excessive stress because of male accessory gland infection, prolonged status of spermatozoa in the epididymis, immature sperms, diabetes, cancer, smoking, drugs. And this is the reason that this history needs to be taken from these men. And of course, in our country, there is so much of pollution and so much of irradiation that in any case, it's not very comfortable. So this leads to oxidative stress, which leads to spermatozoal dysfunction, leads to infertility. And this is where evaluation of the oxidative stress needs to be done. Now, how can you measure oxidative stress? There are direct ways, there are indirect ways, but the direct methods are quite expensive and they are not used too much, but they become a very good tool for assessment. Now, DNA damage is one of the main expressions of ROS production and oxidative stress. And we need to understand that the principle is the quantification of the sperm DNA strands on spermatozoa, and you have the most specific, which is the tunnel assay, or you could go ahead and even do a halo test to judge the DNA fragmentation. Now, these two slides or two diagrams are self-explanatory. In the first, it is seen that live birth rates after IUI, in anybody who has normal, the rates could be about 19. But if DNA fragmentation is high, they dip down to about 1.5%. While in case you are going in for IVF and ICSI, the IVF results are poorer where the DNA fragmentation is high. Now, there are so many studies which have come up showing us different antioxidants and the results of them. Vitamin E, folic acid, zinc, vitamin C, selenium, lycopene, carnitine, astaxanthin, all these drugs are there. But in the end, what we need to understand is that we need to use an antioxidant which is not only easily available, it is one which can be given comfortably in the term of a single day dosage to these men. And the live birth rate as well as pregnancy rates in subfertile couples undergoing ART cycles enhances when you give the men antioxidants. Now, what all antioxidants to be given? I have a whole list over here of the proposed mechanisms of different antioxidants, the effect on sperm parameters, effect on pregnancy rates, effect, what is the daily dose, and there are a lot of paper references for this. But on the whole, if there is any seminal infection give antioxidants with the antibiotic and anti-inflammatory. If there is any low count, DNA fragmentation is down, ROS is there, pollution is there, pus cells are there, you have to add an antioxidant. Now comes obesity-related male infertility. A lot of men come into your clinic who are very obese. You get tested, their testosterone is down. You get the estrogen done, the estrogen is higher. And you realize on history that their sexual performance is down. And when in these men, you go ahead and see the sperm density with the concentration index and the body mass index, you realize that the more the weight, the lesser the sperm density. Now, obesity leads to physical disorders. Genetic disorders may be present. Hormonal disorders are present. It leads to erectile dysfunction and altered seminal parameters. So whenever you see an obese man who enters your clinic, please get the hormonal profile done to check out what it is. Now, whenever you get a testosterone estrogen done of these men, you will find that the testosterone estrogen ratio is normally more than 10. But if it is less than 10, then there is increased aromatase hyperactivity. And because of the increased activity of aromatase, you would like to give these people anastrozole. Normally, you would give them 1 milligram daily for 60 days. And this at times is a wonder drug. Now, empirical use of these drugs as androgens, HCG, HMG, FSH is not to be done. It is only to be done specifically where it would be useful. It is not that any man of infertility or male fertility who has come to you, you give him HCG, or you give him FSH, or you give him clomiphene. That's not the way you do it. What you normally would do is check everything, plan his treatment, then add treatment to it. Medical treatment may need an adjunct of ART. Just like I told you, in a lot of patients of Klinefelter syndrome, non-obstructive azoospermia, we normally would give them HCG to increase the testosterone level, then do the retrieval. Hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism, by giving HCG, may have good sperms to get natural pregnancies. Clomiphene would be given where the testosterone is at the lower end of the normal, or where testosterone is a bit low. And all these need to be understood by us. Please do not give injectable testosterone in infertility. It leads to a marked fall in level of the intratesticular testosterone, and it is not to be given. Now, hyperprolactinemia. Hyperprolactinemia leads to impotence. So if you have a man who is hyperprolactinemic, you may need to put him onto cabergoline. And you would like to get a CT done to see if there is any tumor. And if there is no tumor, and if you feel the tumor, the endocrinologist feels that the tumor could be small, it's a microadenoma, then in these people, you would need to give cabergoline from 1 milligram per week to about 0.5 milligram regularly, which actually acts like a wonder drug for them. Now, what are the key messages which I have? So the key messages are that asymptomatic leukocytospermia is to be treated, may not be treated, but it leads to urethritis. Please, in these patients, get a semen count and culture done. If there is positivity, treat it. ROS production is increased. with an increase in leukocyte number. Antibiotic therapy is suggested, but effect on fertility is still unclear. Empirical medication for idiopathic oligozoospermia is not recommended. Infertile men with hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism or where testosterone is less than equal to 300 are candidates for treatment. So always get a testosterone done. And HCG is the treatment of choice for adult onset hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism. Oxidative stress impairs sperm function and is a risk factor for male infertility. Antioxidants supplementation to subfertile male improves the chances of live birth for couples undergoing ART. And well-designed studies are needed to determine the best candidate for antioxidant treatment and formulations and drugs which could yield better results. Now, I'm giving you a summary at the moment for all that I have spoken, that males are responsible for 50%, and in 30% of males, the cause would be unknown, despite whatever you may do. Treatment of idiopathic male infertility consists of ART or empirical medical therapy, which may be hormonal or non-hormonal. Among hormonal therapies, the most effective is clomiphene and FSH, and non-hormonal therapies also are effective in terms of vitamins and trace elements. There is an association which is there between hormonal and non-hormonal therapies, where both may need to be given. And scientific research is still needed further for us to know and clarify the pathophysiology of infertility. We as clinicians are bound to do a good diagnostic workup to identify any factors that may hinder conception and before starting any empirical therapy. Now, what are the future perspectives? Now, the future is interesting because in the future, we would have male germ cell transplantations. For example, you could transplant the cells from the testes of a male into a chimpanzee or a rat and grow them over here and take out sperms from there to use them. These could be xenotransplantations, as I've just spoken to you about. You'll have functional genomics and differential gene expression, which means that whenever you have a system through which sperms are made from primary spermatogonia, there are a few biomarkers which are released. If they could be measured, you could know which are the areas where the problem is lying. And you could have in vitro generation of sperms. My sperms have been generated in the lab itself, and those sperms have been used to micro-inseminate mice and have offsprings. It has not been possible yet in humans because in vitro culture media for the human sperm has not been prepared till now. But the day is not far off when it will be prepared. And if a man does not have sperms, and if a man has non-obstructive azoospermia, sperms are not retrieved, you could take his spermatogonial stem cells. They could either be transplanted. These spermatogonial stem cells could either be transplanted into a mouse, or an organ tissue culture could be done, or an auto transplant could be done, and then these sperms could be used for ICSI. And there could also be a situation in the future where not the spermatogonial stem cells only, even the pluripotent stem cells, like from the skin, could be divided to make haploid germ cells which could be used in the future of stem cells. In fact, I don't know if you know about CRISPR. CRISPR-Cas9 is the most magical gene editing technology which is being used. And it is being used on the basis of which the way the virus works. What does a virus do? A virus gets into your cell. Once it gets into your cell, it starts replicating and forming pattern of your genome and replacing it with theirs. Similarly, if there is one area which is there of diabetes, and if it could be replicated and replaced with another genome, so that in the embryo, if there are cells which would lead to diabetes or thalassemia, it would not be there. This would be magical. And do we know that CRISPR has gone ahead phenomenally? And I hope not, that if CRISPR goes out of hand, one day they would be designer babies. So I could not have a wife like Katrina Kaif. I want a daughter like Katrina Kaif. Editing could be done and you could get a baby like Katrina Kaif. You wanted a son who wants to become a cricketer. His gene could be set like Sachin Tendulkar. But there'll be a big problem. And the big problem which would be there is that in the class, the topper always would be a designer baby. The cricket team captain of India would be a designer baby. But I think this would not happen. It is just the way I was placing it. But CRISPR-Cas9 and gene editing is the future of mankind to remove diseases. In fact, in the future, to prevent from pandemics, there may be some CRISPR techniques which may be used to make a cell genome like this. And therefore, it's an interesting thing to go into. And this is another future perspective which I would like you to just think about, because any human being grows only by ideas. And at the time when your mind comes up with the idea which other people have not thought of, and you kind of bend reality, does a new reality take place? Just like the iPhone. Steve Jobs bent reality and thought of something like the iPod, the iPhone. And that bending of reality brought something into this world which has changed everything. So in the future, I'll just show you this slide, you'll understand it. Till now, a man produces a sperm, a woman produces an oocyte, and you have a baby. If there are gay couples and there are two men, till now what was done was, donor egg was taken, and with the donor egg, you would get a surrogate. But in case the pluripotent stem cell could be made into an oocyte, and the sperm of one man, they have a baby and place it in a surrogate, they could have a baby of their own genome. And if there are two women who want a child, one could give an oocyte, and the other from a pluripotent stem cell could make a sperm. And these could get together to give them a baby of their own genome. But the only problem is, with both of them, they would only have a female child. They would never have a male child. So it's a very interesting thing about the future, which all of us should look into. And it's been such a pleasure to have all of you with us. Thank you very much for sparing time. I really appreciate it and feel that these moments spent would be useful to you. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you so much. And Dr. Sonal, are there any questions which are there? Because I don't have any idea.
First of all, let me thank you. It was a very insightful talk, right from the basic to the practical points and the future. And the designer babies, it was fantastic. They all have appreciated your talk. And there are some questions which I will be asking you. Sir, what is the treatment of asthenospermia with motility of around 2%?
Motility of?
2%.
See, first thing which you would do is examine this patient. See if this patient has any varicocele. See if this patient has any infection in the semen. The treatable causes of a low motility would normally be either leukocytospermia, infection, or a varicocele. Now, you also, since you're saying the count is the count also down?
Sir, they have not asked it. They are asking asthenospermia.
Okay. So for asthenospermia, you would first examine, see if there's a varicocele. If there's a varicocele, by doing a varicocelectomy, there may be an improvement. And the second thing you need to do is check if there is any infection. If there is an infection, treat the infection. Give these patients, take these patients away from pollution, take these patients away from any kind of ROS, give them antioxidants, wait for 2 to 3 months, get the report done again, and check.
Right, sir. So again, one question that already you discussed it, but they are asking oligospermia with normal hormonal levels.
Very common, and this is the most common area where you have normal hormonal levels and you have oligospermia. You have to understand two things, that 25 to 30% of these men, out of the total population of men, you will never find a cause. And if the cause has not been found after examination, after investigations, give them antioxidants. Give them antioxidants for 2 to 3 months. See if the testosterone is normal. If the testosterone is low, you could give them clomiphene. And after 2 to 3 months, judge. In case the sperm count has improved, fine. Otherwise, along with medication, take them up for ART.
Correct, sir. Sir, is there anything like male menopause? Does age affects the male fertility?
See, now there are two different things. The last lecture we had on hypogonadism, you should have attended. It was completely on male menopause. And male menopause, which you call as andropause, if you could call it, is very common. Very common. You have a listless man who has grown fat, who is screaming at his family, who is grumpy, who feels he doesn't want to live further, no sexual desire is there. And these are the men who have low testosterone and andropause. First thing. So in these men, you may need to give testosterone. The best is giving a gel to these men. So this is hypogonadism. Now next you comes, how does age? See, it always used to be said that age makes no matter difference. Even an 80-year-old man can produce a child. Yes, he can. But the DNA fragmentation goes up phenomenally with age, which has been seen. So since the DNA fragmentation is high with age, so the chances of abortions are more, and even the fertility becomes less as age increases.
And sir, in case of hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism, if you have given HCG and following that you are adding up with FSH, should we decrease the dose of HCG?
No. No. You in fact titrate the dose of HCG so that you are able to get a normal testosterone for this man. And only when you reach a testosterone level which is about 300, 325, do you start these people on HMG. Otherwise, HMG will not work so well.
Correct. And the HCG has to be continued, or?
Yes, it has to be continued.
Correct. Another question is, in case of oligo or asthenospermia, where hormones are normal, will CC or letrozole or HCG will improve the quality of sperm?
What is most important is the intratesticular milieu of testosterone. And that is the most important thing. So all these three drugs will only work if the testosterone is either low or it is at the lower end of normal. So in case it is there around 300, 325 below it, you could try clomiphene. In case the estrogen-androgen ratio is deranged, you could give them anastrozole. And you, of course, can try HCG in this subset of patients.
Right, sir. So they are asking, in case of severe oligospermia with normal hormones, Which method of IUI do you prefer? I think they are asking about the sperm wash technique.
See, if you have a low sperm count, there is no point of doing an IUI if the count is less than 5 million. So you won't get any results, you'll be wasting time. But in case the count is low and you want to do an IUI, and if it is more than 5 million, you would use a density gradient for that. That is what is ideally used.
So next question is how diagnose retrograde ejaculation in a patient?
Ask the patient would give you a history that he's not able to ejaculate, or there is no sperms coming or very less semen coming. You would ask him to ejaculate, and after ejaculation pass a urine sample, and you would check the urine sample for sperms. If sperms are present, it would be retrograde ejaculation.
There is a patient case question. I have a patient, 28-year-old male with primary infertility, with non-obstructive azoospermia, with FSH as 8, and total testosterone more than 1,500. How do I go with the management?
1,500 is a very high testosterone for a patient of non-obstructive azoospermia. So this person must have been taken external testosterone, which is given to these people by a lot of people, which should never be taken. So the first thing which you need to do is withdraw that testosterone or whatever he's taking, wait for about 3 months, get all the parameters done again, check how things are. Non-obstructive azoospermia, about 40% of these people can get their own babies by micro-TSA, but for that the testosterone level should remain normal. But 1,500 means this man is taking injectables. Please stop that, wait for 3 months, call him after 3 months.
Again, a case, 31 years, testosterone normal, prolactin, thyroid normal, loss of libido and erectile dysfunction with infertility. How we should proceed?
Testosterone is normal, prolactin is normal, loss of libido is present, testosterone is fine. See, try to understand, if the testosterone is normal, then at times loss of libido is psychological. So you need to take a very deep history of this man and try to understand what exactly it is.
How you will manage 100% non-motile sperm?
I'll give you an example of a patient I just had.
Right.
Patient was sent to me by Dr. Meera Agnihotri from Kanpur, and the gentleman came to us. He had 100% immotile sperms. We did a horse test for him, and we did not find any live sperm. So what you do is, every immotile sperm may not necessarily be non-viable. They could be living. So you do a vitality test or a horse test on them. So in this patient, we did a vitality test and we did a horse test. Both of them came as negative. So we put the patient on antioxidants, and we put him on antioxidants for 3 months. And after 3 months, when we did his horse test again, we found very few live sperms, and we used those sperms for the ICSI. So it takes time, it's a tough job, but in immotile sperms, do a vitality test or a horse test, see if they are viable sperms. If they are viable sperms, use them for ICSI. The genetic material, if it is fine, babies can be there.
Thank you. And there are many questions. Only one question I will be asking because of constraint of time. What is preferable, letrozole or clomiphene citrate?
Both are different indications.
Right.
One is an aromatase inhibitor. So there you would use where the estrogen level is high and testosterone is low. That's where you would use letrozole or anastrozole. Clomiphene citrate is used otherwise, wherever the testosterone is down and the estrogen level would be normal. So they don't replace each other. They are to be used in different areas, in different patients.
And the dosage of clomiphene would be 25 and letrozole would be 2.5?
See, what I normally give is anastrozole.
Right.
So what I normally give is anastrozole, and clomiphene you can give 25 to 50 milligram for about 3 months.
So, sir, thank you giving us very insightful and practical lecture, as well as based on your vast experience. It was wonderful. I thank you on behalf of INTAS as well as viewers. They are also asking for your webinar PDF.
Okay,
And,
so you could
yeah,
you could do one thing. You could do one thing. You could just note down one number. I'll just give you a number and send a WhatsApp on that, and I'll send you a PDF. One sec. Just 1 minute. I'll. Eight 800. Sorry, 800 6666 085. I'll just write it down in the chat box. 800 6666 085. Can the people from this thing copy it in the chat box, please? This number. Le? Can you ask somebody to copy this in the chat box?
We'll do it, sir.
So it is 800 6666 085. Please send a WhatsApp with your name on this, and we'll WhatsApp you back the PDF for this.
fine, sir.
So
Thank you.
Once again, thank you so much, sir, for very insightful and wonderful talk, which made this Father's Day very special. It was indeed a Father's Day special talk, and it took us to the journey of various advanced medical sciences, which helps men to become father. So really enjoyed it, sir, and we are looking forward for your next talk, which is on 27th of June, which will be on poor responders.
So we now have 2 talks left. One is on poor responders. So can you imagine this beautiful hormone known as testosterone is used in women? Can you imagine it's used in women? And it's used in women to make oocytes. And this is the latest cutting edge technology which is used, about which in the next seminar we'll be talking about how to use testosterone in poor responders. And after that, we have another lecture on which we have testosterone as its use in male and female sexual dysfunction, which becomes very useful too. So it will be greatly interesting. The next we have on the 27th. And thank you very much, all of you, for your kind patience and being here with us. But I think it's been an enjoyable afternoon on Father's Day, and a very happy Father's Day to all of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.